Well, joining me now is Mitul Kotecha, Global Head of FX Strategy for Credit Agricole. Mitul, thank you very much indeed for speaking to us. I actually wanted to start by asking you about the outlook for Japan. Just tell me a little bit about your expectations for this country as we head into 2011, particularly in light of the Bank of Japan's decision today to keep its key interest rate and the size of its asset purchase program unchanged.
Well, I think the economy seems to be doing reasonably well in Japanese terms. This year it's coming from a reasonably strong growth rate, and next year actually our economists believe that Japan will grow above trend. That's not saying a lot because trend growth is probably around 1% for Japan. But there is a lot of pressure on the Bank of Japan to end deflation. We believe core inflation next year will be around minus 0.4%, so we don't see any significant ending of the deflationary problems. And that will mean more aggressive policy, perhaps increased JGB buying, unsterilized, or even an inflation target. And I think ultimately, combined with this, it will require a weaker Japanese yen.
Outlook for the euro. We just had China saying that they will take concrete action to help Europe in its debt crisis.
Well, I think we may see a little bit of support for the euro early in the year. We may see more significant buying of eurozone debt by the ECB. But overall, I think it's a negative year for the euro. We look for euro dollar to end the year about 125, potentially even lower than that as eurozone tensions continue. We haven't seen any significant resolution to the problems that we've seen in Europe all throughout this year. And I think that's going to be an ongoing issue for markets throughout 2011.
Do you stick with that scenario even if the ECB were to provide further support for European bond markets?
Well, I think if the ECB does provide support, it will help, and I think that's why we see perhaps some upside for euro-dollar in the first quarter. But the reality is that the underlying issues remain in place, and the growth divergence is continuing. We're still seeing pretty robust growth in Northern Europe, of course, led by Germany. Southern Europe, of course, has huge problems in terms of economic growth, and the problems in terms of the debt markets and fiscal austerity measures will weaken growth even further. So I think it's going to be a tough task for the ECB to stand alone and prop up eurozone markets completely. What
about the US? Does recent economic data out of that country bode well for 2011?
Yeah, I think so. I think we're seeing some encouraging numbers out of the US. Certainly, next year, a lot of analysts have been revising higher their growth forecasts for the US economy. We see growth for about 3% next year, which is pretty much around trend or above trend. So it's a reasonable recovery in the US economy. But of course, the big problems will be the labor market. We see a very slow labor market recovery. Unemployment rate will remain pretty high, and inflation pressures will remain benign. So core inflation will continue to remain very benign. So there is still this risk of even QE3. But I would argue that the recent tax deal, the fiscal deal that the Obama administration has managed to pass through, will limit any need for that. So overall, we believe higher US bond yields will play positively for the US dollar against many currencies next year.
Mitul Kotecha in Hong Kong, Global Head of FX Strategy for Credit Agricole. Great to get your thoughts. Thanks for joining us.